Okay, dokie, one more second. We are live. Okay, Miss June, we're ready.
Okay, welcome. We're calling this meeting to order on October 7th at 10:02 a.m. To review a specific item for grading. I will turn it over to Ms. Reagan now.
All right. Miss June, I'll read the role of the board of the mission for you real quick too, just to make it official. Role of the board, we are entrusted to care for the current school and stay focused on the vision for the future school. No trust, no unity, no progress. Mission of Clover Garden School. Clover Garden School will foster community, generate enthusiasm, challenge students academically, and produce successful citizens. All right. Thank y'all for meeting this morning. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. We are going to propose to make an addendum to our staff handbook, a section that is in our staff handbook as it relates to academics and relates to our grade floor. So just a little bit of a background here. We are referring to page 9 in our staff handbook, and the way it reads, and I'm going to read it directly to you. Our staff handbook, the way it reads right now is on page 9, that the lowest score that will appear on the student's report card will be a 50. Teachers shall record actual scores in the grade book and on assigned work, but each 9 weeks grades shall not be below 50 and points shall not be deducted from a student's grade for disciplinary reasons. So that is how it's originally written. So what we did was years ago, we put in a grade floor. So we have like a 50%. So those kids that are struggling and having a hard time, it's almost like a saving grace, so to speak, because mathematically, if they are, scoring 16s on the first quarter, things like that, it's almost impossible for them to make that back up and be able to pass that course for the year. So it's almost like an olive branch, so to speak, to give them an opportunity so they're not so far behind. And so we do have some current concerns with our grade floor. I'm not interested in changing that right now because our school year has already started. And that 50 has been shared with some of our students from teachers and things like that. But that was back when we had a 7-point grade scale, and now we're on the 10-point grade scale. So, that 50 grade floor, well, if you have a 60, you pass. So there's some discrepancy there that I would like to discuss at a later date about potentially changing that as well, just to continue to challenge our kids academically and set those standards high. But for now, I would like to just leave the 50 that's in there, but I would like to make a slight change to that. And I have brought in our experts. Mr. Cheek is our mathematics instructor here in high school, and he is going to explain some of the change to you and the math that kind of goes along with it. And then I have Ms. Nina in here with me, of course, is our registrar, who deals with Power School and the calculations on a daily basis. So what we are looking at is we want to make a proposed change to what I just read to you, and I will share my screen here once Mr. Cheek is finished explaining and kind of going over what we want to do. But I would like to change it so that it's more equitable because this year we have both the block courses, or we call them the semester courses, and then we have the year-long courses, which are known as periods. So you've got 2 different types of courses that a general blanket of a 50 for quarter 1 is not equitable because, one student, their classes are over at Christmas time, January, and the rest of them, they keep going. So we have a proposed option, and I'll just read this to you. What we would like to propose to be voted on today would be to change the verbiage, and I'll just share my screen. Let me go ahead and do that. And I'll show you what I'm talking about, and then he is going to explain. Okay, can you guys see what we see? Do you see current verbiage in the staff handbook? And just a reminder, if you need to zoom in, if you go to the very top, it'll say view. And if you go over, you can zoom in so you can see what we're looking at a little bit bigger. So this is what it says currently. This is what I just read to you. What we would like to change it to is that students in year-long courses receive a grade no lower than 50, but move it to semester 1. And then students in semester-long courses shall receive a grade no lower than a 50 for the first and third quarters. So their quarter for the semester long classes is like their halfway point. You know, there's only 2 quarters. So that's kind of what we want to look at. And I'm gonna get Mr. Cheek to explain it to you much more clearly in mathematical terms and calculations based on what we had and why that's not equitable to what we need. This opportunity here would give, like I said, be equitable to whether or not you're in a semester long class or if you're in a year long class. So I'm gonna let him jump on here and get me to close this screen out. I'll leave it up there in your diagrams up there too. You want to show it?
Whatever you think. I can if I get to it.
I'm gonna stop this for a quick second and then I am going to, this I shared with you guys on in your email. So I'm gonna pull up the diagram too while he's talking if he needs it. Okay, can you see the diagram there? Just a thumbs up if you can see it. Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Cheek.
Hello, good morning. I'm Jason Cheek, and I teach math here. But basically, the discrepancy is that we moved to a hybrid model schedule now, and when we say quarter one in a block course, that means something different than saying quarter one in a year-long course. And so the current verbiage says that a student will receive no grade less than 50 for quarter one. Actually, it reads the 9 weeks. And that's just not equitable, because if you wait till the middle of, if you wait 9 weeks into the year, you're halfway through a semester course, but you're only a quarter of the way through a year-long course. And so giving a 50 to both of those different situations is certainly not equitable. And so what we are proposing is that using different verbiage in the policy that makes a distinction between semester-long courses, which are only half a year, and period courses, which are a year long. And so basically what we're saying is, if you look at the diagram up there, you see how the grades are averaged. Quarter one, it says 90%. That is all of the tests and quizzes and the projects and the homework that a student might do in the first 9 weeks. And then at the end of that 9 weeks, ideally, they would have a midterm exam that would count 10%. And so that quarter one and that midterm come together, 90 and 10%, to make their H1 grade. And we came up with the name H1. H stands for half. It's halfway through the semester. So that H1 grade is really their first 9 weeks grade in a semester, first semester block course. And if you look down at the bottom of the screen, it's the same type of percentage for a second semester block course, where you have quarter three and midterm coming together to make that H1 grade. So the H1 grade is for semester courses. If that grade happens to be below a 50, then what we are proposing is to bump that child up to a 50 because of the reasons that Ms. Fareka has already mentioned. However, if I scroll down, for a year-long course, the equivalent grade to H1 would be the semester one grade, because the semester one grade happens at the halfway point of a year-long course. So to make a long story short, to make it equitable, you have to, whatever you apply, whatever grading policy you apply to semester one for a year-long course, you have to apply it to H1 for a block course. And that's basically that's it. So we don't have we can't apply the grade floor to the quarters here, because a quarter doesn't mean the same thing in these two different types of courses. So that's basically it. Do you guys have any questions for me that I can help you out with?
Mr.
Everyone
Cheek,
understand the issue? Go ahead.
Yes, yes. This is very clear. Thank you for laying this out. I think this helps a lot. Is the expectation that the policy and this example of how things are going to work are going to be shared with the parents?
I believe so. I can let Ms. Fareka speak to that.
It's not in the student parent handbook. It's only in the staff handbook.
Right. So so this information is actually not shared in our student and parent handbook. This information is just in the staff handbook, because the staff are the ones that have to put the grades in and things like that. However, this diagram itself, I believe we have already shared this, or a version of this, with our families giving them guidance as to how to access or how to understand, stop that share, how to understand PowerSchool and the terminology and things like that. So that is shared with our families. But we're welcome to do, I mean, we can do anything. We can share that with our families. Like I said, some of them may know that based on because 50 has been our, policy for a while, of putting in the 50s. And my biggest thing too is I want to be consistent. I know this applies mostly to our high school courses, but I want to be consistent across the board. So whatever we're doing with high school, let that apply to elementary and middle school as well. Even though elementary, and I'm looking at Ms. Nina, elementary kind of stands on its own with Q1, 2, 3, and 4, but it would be consistent with them as well.
Yeah, and they also show a semester 1 and a semester 2. So.
Okay, well,
excuse me, I said, as an educator, I am glad to see that there is that floor there, because I worked in a system where teachers were allowed to put a 16 as a quarter grade. And as Ms. Verakin mentioned earlier, it's impossible. That child has lost all hope for the year because it's virtually impossible for them to bring it up. I think what Mr. Cheek went over was very clear. And again, I'm just glad to see that Clover Garden realizes the necessity of having some kind of floor.
thank you, Ms. Foster. I totally agree. And Ms. Verakin, I just want, because this does impact grades, I want communication to go out to the parents, so we are being transparent and clear on how we're coming to those grades, how we're coming to that decision that, the child needs either assistance or needs to step up and make sure that they're getting the appropriate grades to pass, et cetera. So I do want either a communication plan or communication to go out to the families, the parents, and everything, so we can be transparent with what's going on with their grades.
Ma'am, we could do that. There's been some, oh, sorry, Mr. Brooks, go ahead.
And just to be clear, in a block course, just because they're given a minimum of 50, they still have to, on the following semester, they couldn't squeak by with a 62 or something like that. They're going to have to average that up to a 70 or something like that. And they're going to have to show that they have the year-long knowledge on the final exam and do good in both of those in order to get a passing grade. So it's not like we're giving someone a free pass. They're still going to have to master it well enough to get a passing grade.
Yes, sir. You're accurate. Yep.
All right.
The only issue I have of maybe making it completely transparent, and I'm not saying we should not be transparent to parents, but I think when you put that out there in the world for them, because I know children, there will be some children that will say, oh, okay, well, I'm just not going to do anything the first semester and I'm going to get a 50 and I'm smart enough that I'll be able to get that 50 to pass in before the end of the year. So I'm talking to you all from a teacher perspective and from having had 13-year-old students. I know how their minds work. So I wonder if there's a way we can be transparent without fully being transparent, because you've got some kids that are going to work that system.
You're right. You're right.
The teachers in this room are going, yep, she is right on. Yep.
I mean, that is, I know them. I just know them.
So that would be my point, Ms. Verakin, is obviously, pick the appropriate communication that needs to go out to the parents.
Yes, ma'am. Yep, and Mr. Cheek makes a good point over here too. This won't apply to everyone. There's only a select group of children that this will apply to. So what we'll do is we can reshare the diagram again, and then I will work with Mr. Cheek and Ms. Moore and Ms. Nina and make sure we have that as clear as we can, but also, we definitely don't want the kids to take advantage of that. The whole point is yes, you might need a glimmer of hope and we're there to get it to you, but at the same time, we expect do the continue work.
So
Well,
we
Miss-
can only share it with the people that it actually applies to. Would that be fine?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yes, Mr. Brooks,
Good
that,
with that too.
yeah, yeah.
And
I think if
And
it
I-
only, yeah, if you can narrow it to only these 100 students that it actually impacts, that's going to cut down any, I think, confusion or anything like that from an elementary parent, et cetera.
And I see nothing wrong with parents knowing and students knowing that there is a floor, but I think they need to know exactly what the floor is, if that makes
Agreed.
sense.
Yep.
Reagan, may I ask how how y'all discovered the discrepancy? How did that come up? Was there a specific situation, without being too specific, that brought this to y'all's attention?
Do you want to speak to this? Ms. Saunders is inquiring about how you guys came to notice this. I know y'all discussed it on grade level. She was just asking if there was a specific.
You were the one that raised the flag. Yeah.
That would be our math man here. So.
Well, there's musical chairs. We don't have any music though. There's not much to say other than I just noticed it because it's just mathematically inaccurate. I mean, it's just, if you've got H1 that counts 37.5% of a semester course grade, and you're going to change that, then you have to change it equitably for a year-long class. And if you notice the semester one, are we sharing screen? No, we're not. That's okay. But on that diagram she put up before, the H1 counts 37.5%, and the semester one counts 37.5%. So logically, it would just stand true that if you're going to change one of those grades, if you're going to change one, you have to change the other to make it equitable. So that's how we came up with it. I just noticed that wasn't going to be equitable.
Math doesn't lie.
Really,
Yeah,
all I
right.
wanted to do was, I appreciate
That's why,
somebody.
that's why I love it so much. Math has never lied to me.
Right. I just appreciate somebody watching the numbers that closely. I mean, I think to me that's something that had it not been caught, that would be something that would be a little egg on our face, so to speak. So thank you for catching that and bringing that to our attention. That's great. We appreciate that, Mr. Chief.
You're welcome. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Rankin.
And Messina made another good point too while we were on the other side of the laptop. Is that, it will show the parents their earned grade. It's not just going to put that blanket 50 in there, so they know where their kids have to go between now and the end of the semester too. So, I personally think that you're being more accurate with where the kids actually are. And not giving them a false sense, of hope, but also just a realistic view of where they're at. But also there's that saving grace in there too. So it's almost like you're pushing them to be accountable and hold their own, but also you've got a safety net kind of a way to kind of give them an opportunity if it's
Transparent and.
Do we have a lot of kids that fall into this category that would actually be affected? Just not to hold anybody to a number, but I mean, is it 10% of our kids, 25% of our kids, or how many fall into something like that?
what percentage is out of 655?
I mean,
Excuse me, I'm asking my calculator. One moment.
655?
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly. I don't know.
We are very blessed to have Mr. Cheek with us. These are handbooks that we read every year. And, and you go through and you comb through it, but it's not until you're into a situation like this year with our new schedule that we realize, oh snap, that's not accurate. Like we need to fix that. And I'm not a big fan of changing anything in the middle of the year. And so, I told Mr. Cheek, I said, I don't want to change, the floor and stuff like that. I said, but let's look at it again. And he was like, can we call a meeting? And I was like, let me see what we can do. Cause I know some of y'all are on break next week as well. So, that was, we greatly appreciate of him and our high school teachers especially, and those folks that have, crunched the numbers, so to speak. So we greatly appreciate that.
13%.
So we've got about 13% of our total population that this would apply to.
High school students might
Thank
be not good, so it's not, that 13% seems high, but it's a little bit of a misnomer because it's probably lower than that.
I don't know if you can hear Mr. Cheek, but the 13% may seem high, but what he's saying is that is counting, a high school child has 6 classes. So that's, if they're failing one class out of all 6 of those, they're counted in that 13%.
Thank you. I was just looking for kind of an overall number.
And typically, teaching from a classroom point of view, I used that very same floor myself. So I could have taught at Clover Garden, I think, for many years. But at any rate, there were very few that fall within just a given classroom, you know, of say 25. You maybe had 2 or 3 who would fall under that category at a given time. And I did not teach advanced students. I taught inclusion students and kind of middle of the road students. So it's not a number that you have to use often.
But important to have in place. I greatly
Yes,
appreciate.
for
Absolutely.
sure.
Okay, any further questions regarding updating the staff handbook for the grade floor consistency? Are we ready to take a vote? All those in favor of updating the staff handbook with the proposed grade floor consistency policy, say aye.
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 Lynn
Aye.
Foster.
So we have Ms. Saunders is aye, Mr. Brooks is aye, Ms. Foster is aye, and Mr. Huffines is aye. Are there any other items that we need to discuss during this meeting?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay. Want to thank everyone for their time. Thank you, Mr. Cheek, again for finding the issue, the math expert finding the math and making sure it makes sense. Ms. Verakin, thank you for engaging us and getting us all together to make sure we get this addressed immediately. At this time, at 10:23 a.m., we will close the meeting.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Hi,
Good
y'all.
job.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You
You
too.
too.